Hello and welcome to the G3 Pulse podcast. My guest today is Marco Herrera, the recently appointed President of Europe, the Middle East and Africa at Interblock. Marco, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Louis. Great to see you. It's been a long time.
It has definitely been a while. You've been out of general population for quite some time, Marco. What have you been up to?
Well, listen, as things go when you leave a big company like Scientific Games, took a little time off. I had a year sabbatical, went back to Las Vegas, bought a house, relaxed for about a year, and then last G2E I started looking for employment. I had a few different possibilities, and there I met John Conley, and here I am.
For those that don't know much about yourself and your kind of history within the gaming industry, I just wanted you to bring up some of our audience to speed about who you are, what your background is as well, Marco.
Listen, I'll tell you probably something I've never told you, Louis, and I was thinking about that as my birthday's coming up on Monday. So the first time I lived in Las Vegas was 1972.
Okay.
I have actually been circling around gaming most of my life, half a century now.
Okay.
My uncles opened the first Latin American department in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace when that got sold to Clifford Perlman, and that became Caesar's World.
Okay.
At the time, I was living in Venezuela, and my mother ran the office there for Caesar's World. So I've been around gaming pretty much my entire life, but I only actually got employed in gaming in 2006 when I joined Bally and moved to France. So it was kind of everything coming together with my experience. So I'm a technical guy, I'm an international guy, and I've been around gaming all my life. And there it all came together when I first moved to Nice to manage the MCC division for Bally.
I remember that well. Yeah. It's been a while since you and I first started off meeting at the iShow about MCC as well. What's been the path recently that's taking you to Interblock, and why choose the company at this time? Obviously, in relation to Oaktree Capital just taking over it, was there a connection there as well?
Yeah, there were really a lot of things that came together there, right? My first conversations with John were really around the fact that Oaktree was about to purchase Interblock, then he needed someone in Europe. At the time, I wasn't even thinking of coming back to Europe. Quite honestly, I had some opportunities in the US. I was looking at staying there. But clearly, after 15 years in Europe and really living here when I was a kid, it interested me, right? So I met the Oaktree guys, really hit it off with them, really liked them. The possibility of working with John again. I worked with him over 10 years at Bally, and coming back to Europe really all came together, and it was just a wonderful opportunity to do what I do, which is integration of acquisitions, multicultural bridging. As we become more of a U.S. organization, making sure that we can influence things a little bit in Europe while being conscious of the differences and the cultural differences here in Europe. So it was just a very interesting opportunity, and I had to jump on it.
Well, our gain and the loss of the US. But in terms of your new role as president of EMEA, you were mentioning John Conley before. What did, as the global CEO of the company, I talked about a podcast that I had with him a week ago. What's he tasked you to do, Marco? What's your remit?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. John is such an entrepreneur, right? He's a sales force on his own, and what he accomplished with this company over the last few years is absolutely unbelievable to me, right? I'm really here to do what I do, which is more on the day-to-day operational side, making sure that we can bring Europe back. I guess that's the number one priority at this point. The growth has been in the U.S., and perhaps we need to focus more on the European markets, which in my mind have tremendous potential still. And also making sure that John can do what he needs to do as the CEO of the company to help us grow, to expand, to do other things with the company so that we can fulfill the destiny that Oaktree wants.
Sure. One of the things that John was mentioning in the conversation I had with him is that ETG penetration in Asia is close to 15%. I think you said 14%. While in the US, it's currently around 1%. I just wondered, do you have a handle on what the situation is like for ETGs in Europe at the moment?
Listen, I've been studying that quite a bit since I started, and quite honestly, it is a mixed bag, right? So,
Okay.
when I look at markets that have grown in the recent, 5, 10 years, like France, for example, right? The ETG penetration there is probably approaching some 20%, if not more, right?
Okay.
So when I look at that market, 22,000 machines, give or take, there's about 4,000 to 4,500 ETGs in that market, right? After the
Okay.
crisis, that became really the way to increase revenue there. If I look at other areas of Europe, there's a tremendous amount of ETGs. If you look at the totality and you just look at, say, the casino markets, supposing we have, some 150, 200,000 slot machines out there, right? There's probably some 50 or 60,000 ETGs when you
Okay.
look at it. So it really depends on the country and on the market. There's still room to grow, I think, in many markets. We're starting to see some momentum in certain Eastern European markets, but I think it's really still a growing market, still a lot of opportunity. Some replacement cycles certainly coming with some ETGs that have been out there for 10, 15 years. So we see a lot of potential still.
And is the biggest limiting factor that legacy product that's already out there in terms of it being decades old, but still almost like the era, the never needing to be replaced light bulb, they just seem to keep going. Or is the fact that there's a lack of space on casino floors, the bigger issue, or even the capex that European operators have right now? What do you see the difficulties in terms of the challenge to actually get new products onto floor?
I think all of the above, right? I mean, when I look at the average ETG in a market, say like Spain, where you see a lot of ETGs in the arcades there, right?
Yeah,
That's been traditionally one of our biggest markets. There is a lot of old product there, and it tends to last a long time, right? You
yeah,
sell an ETG, it'll be there for 10, 15 years, right? If we
yeah.
could move more towards a lease business, it would be a different story. But I also see what John touched on when you had the podcast with him, right? Which is,
Yeah.
the innovation, the addition of other games, right? Everybody says, okay, Europe traditionally has been a roulette market, and Europe may be slow to move on some things, right? But I
Yeah.
kind of see this organic aspect of gaming where you do something in one place, it takes hold, it moves to another place, right? And I think
Yeah.
what John's done with all the variety of product that we have in the US will end up serving us in Europe and certainly in markets that are growing. I think we'll see more stadium installations as an example, rather
Okay.
than the traditional 8-seat roulette in some place. Now, clearly space becomes an issue, and that's a conversation that very often happens with customers. But, customers like Holland Casino, for example, have taken advantage of that format. And I
Okay.
think that other customers are looking at that aggressively now.
Well, speaking of Holland, casinos, obviously the new Venlo location. I mean, do multiplayers in that sense? Do they need a new location? Is that the kind of the ultimate kind of an environment for them? Because otherwise, you're trying to squeeze them into locations and squeeze them onto floors that were never really designed for that kind of stadium aspect. And a lot of the time, a lot of these kind of multiplayers that are already out there, or they always remind me of the kind of brass and gold and walnut of like an old gentleman's club. There's something about them, about the new venues and the way that works. Do you think there's still opportunities for that kind of kind of resurgence of new designs and modernism to actually get into some of the floors in Europe at this time?
No, I think that obviously casino operators are looking to remodel their floors and make room for such a product, right? And you know that, if you went to Macau some 10 years ago, you would have seen this stuff everywhere.
Yeah,
If you went to Las Vegas and, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you'd hardly see the product. And now you go and it's everywhere. Clearly, that large format casino lends itself to that. But I think that certainly when casinos now are designing a new place, or remodeling their floor, they're thinking of this product segment as well, right? And what we're seeing is that distribution of players, right? That it is a slightly different player. It bridges the gap between tables and slots. It brings in a younger crowd. And I think that eventually those are some of the table players of the future. And we're seeing that just about everywhere.
Sure. You obviously your title EMEA president of includes Africa as well, and as a market, what I know there's a focus on Europe, and that's just kind of typical of where our perspective is. But it's a huge market. Do you see growth opportunities there as well, Marco?
Yeah, listen, even if I look as far as South Africa, I think that the ETG percentage of the floor there is low. And I think that's a product that has potential even in those large markets. But when I start looking at other places that are growing, Ghana, Kenya, other places in Africa, take away Northern Africa, which I think for sure is a potential market, we see growth opportunity there. Obviously, not huge. The number of casinos is limited, the number of positions is limited, but certainly it's an area that we want to be more involved in. And probably we will dedicate some of our sales resources to be in that market.
Okay, thank you for that. Finally, we've seen COVID kind of hit the market in Europe as compared to the rest of the world. And I'm just wondering what change do you think will be temporary as compared to permanent when we've seen the US bounce back to actually higher levels than in 2019? Do you think Europe is on that kind of same recovery path, or do you think it's actually going to be a different divergent route to that kind of recovery?
Listen, the first thing I did when I got here was to start traveling a little bit to visit some of the key markets, right? The news that I got from the customers was very positive, right? So, markets like France are back to 2019 levels. Holland can say the same thing. So, those big markets with some casino presence, we're starting to see that once they opened, there was a lot of pent up demand and players came immediately. It's not everywhere in Europe like that. I think it'll take some time, but certainly we expect a similar trend that we're seeing in the U.S. And LATAM and Asia. As casinos get back into the groove of things, we feel that they're going to have a stellar year. If we can control COVID, and I think at this point we're just going to have to learn to live with it, we'll start seeing that next year, I think, everywhere in Europe.
No, I agree. Thank you for the kind of analysis on that because I think whereas there's been a lot of focus on the US, there's been a bit of a kind of a wet finger in the air about where Europe's particularly at this moment in time until we get to probably ICE of next year. In the meantime, I'm looking forward to meeting you at G2E. I think, as John said in our podcast, it's going to be an absolute stellar mega show. Looking forward to all the new products that Interblock are bringing out. He's teased and tantalized with that. So looking forward to being on the stand, meeting you both. And in the meantime, thank you for taking part in the podcast. Good luck in the new role. And after, I think, a 4-year absence, look forward to meeting you again.
Thank you, Louis. Same here. I look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas. I think we'll have quite a few Europeans there this year, more than usual because they've been away for 3-4 years as well. Probably not as many as we'll see at ICE next year, but it's going to be a good show. Look forward to seeing you there.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Marco. Bye.
Yep. Bye.